Last week, Republican Senator Ted Cruz penned an op-ed for FoxNews.com where he actually bragged about the fact that Donald Trump has destroyed an entire branch of the federal government. But of course, Ted Cruz doesn't see it as destroying this branch of government. He sees it as saving this branch of government. And of course, I am talking not about the executive branch, but the judiciary. Here is how Ted Cruz began this very disgusting op-ed. Since January 2017, President Trump has appointed and the Senate has confirmed 158 life-tenured federal judges, including 20 who today serve in Texas. Taken together, the president's nominees over the last 3 years have filled 1/4 of the seats on our nation's Circuit Court of Appeals and 2 of the 9 seats on the U.S. Supreme Court. Few legacies will be longer lasting than this judicial one. These new judges are principled constitutionalists who have demonstrated excellence and professionalism throughout their legal careers. Now that's where I'm going to have to disagree with you, Mr. Cruz, because these are not legal professionals. These are not people who actually care what the Constitution has to say. In fact, these are some people, some of them, who the American Bar Association has said are not qualified to serve as judges, but you and your Republicans in the Senate put them in place anyway. And then you all attacked the ABA as if somehow they did something wrong. The judiciary is one of the most dangerous branches of federal government. And one of the reasons it's so dangerous is because only conservatives tend to pay attention to it. I'm sorry, progressives and liberals, but we as a whole don't do a good job of paying attention to what's happening in the lower courts. Conservatives do, and they always have, at least since the Powell memo came out in the early 1970s. They knew what they were doing. It's been their plan for almost 50 years. And for 50 years, the Democratic Party has been whistling past the graveyard, only talking about the importance of the Supreme Court, which hears about 150 cases a year, ignoring the fact that tens of thousands of cases in this country every year are decided at that circuit court level where Donald Trump now controls 25% of the judges. Obama left office with more than 100 vacancies in these areas. And yeah, sure, you can blame it all on Republican obstruction if you'd like. You can also blame some of it on Obama for not doing recess appointments that Republicans couldn't have objected to. He could have just done it in most instances, and those people would be on the bench. Now, he couldn't do it with the Supreme Court, at least not permanently, but he could have saved us from more than 100 Donald Trump nominees getting the final say on tens of thousands of cases per year. Now, Ted Cruz believes that these judges he has helped put in place are going to save democracy. He believes that they're going to increase our religious freedom here in the United States, that they're going to uphold the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And beyond that, he doesn't care, because they're going to side with corporations as often as they can, and those same corporations are going to put money in Ted Cruz's pocket and the pocket of every corporatist politician in this country. Meanwhile, our civil rights and our consumer rights in this country get set back for at least a generation because, as Ted Cruz pointed out in his opening right there, these are life-tenured judges. There's literally nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. And that is one of the worst feelings in the world. Knowing that this happened, knowing that Obama helped let it happen, and don't lie to yourselves and pretend that he didn't, and then knowing that there's nothing we can do. Sure, you could impeach them if they ever commit an actual crime, but that would also require people to pay attention to these courts and pay attention to these judges and investigate them. And I'm sorry, but nobody in Congress is actually going to do that.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with Ron Placone. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Hey, Jimmy. How's it going?
I'm doing good. Hey, you can see us. We're doing a live Jimmy Dore Show October 12th in Burbank, and Ron's doing a West Coast tour. Where are you going?
Yeah, November 2nd, I'll be in Sacramento. November 3rd, San Francisco. November 17th, Santa Barbara. And then November 23rd, I'll be in Pittsburgh. Tickets for all those available at ronplacone.com.
So the Democrats are the resistance. That's what they say. They're the resistance. They're resisting Trump. Except they're not. The Democrats, just enough Democrats joined in to regulate Wall Street. All the Democrats joined in giving the guy who's a maniac, crazy person, who's a Manchurian candidate, he's actually working for the Russians. They gave him an extra $80 billion for bombs. Isn't that funny? If you really thought he was working for the Russians, why would you give him extra money for bombs? And now they're standing up to his judicial nominees. They're actually fast tracking them. They're actually fast tracking the Republicans who wouldn't even give a hearing to the Supreme Court nominee of Barack Obama for a year. Chuck Schumer's going to fast track their lifetime appointments. Senate Democrats just gave a huge gift to President Donald Trump. They agreed to expedite votes on 15 of his nominees to lifetime federal court seats because they wanted to go home.
They had some killer Labor Day plans, some of them.
They wanted to go home and camp. That's what they said. They wanted to go home and campaign. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had lined up votes for all those district court nominees last week. Normally, Senate rules require up to 30 hours of waiting time for each nominee, something Democrats typically take advantage of to delay action on confirming Trump judges.
They had fishing trips to go on.
But Minority Leader Chuck Schumer cut a deal with McConnell on Tuesday to bypass the wait times and let them all get through. I know you guys completely obstructed Barack Obama's court appointment and whatever. As punishment for that, we're going to fast track everything you want. See how we fight? We're the resistance. Why did they do that? So the Democrats could get back to campaigning and focusing on winning re-election in November. The Senate is now out of session until next Tuesday. Of the 15 nominees, 6 were confirmed by voice vote on Tuesday. Another one was confirmed on a recorded vote. The remaining 8 will get quick votes next week.
And one of those is just going to be a text message. They're just going to...
It is a major win for Trump and McConnell, whose number one priority is filling up federal courts with conservative judges, many of whom are incredibly anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ rights, and anti-voting rights. Chuck Schumer got to fast-track those. Trump has gotten 26 circuit court judges confirmed, more than any other president at this point in the term. Quit. What are they doing? Another way of putting it, 1 in 7 U.S. Circuit Court seats is now filled by a judge nominated by Trump. It would have taken only one Democratic senator to say no to letting the nominees through this week, but none did. One. Even Bernie Sanders didn't.
Wow.
Bernie's playing ball. Elizabeth Warren didn't. Bernie didn't. Kamala Harris didn't. That's surprising. Cory Booker, fighter of the people, for the people, fighter of the people. Trading this many lifetime positions away for a couple days back home in the dead of August is a metaphor for how myopic the Democrats' approach has been at this dark moment in history, said Brian Fallon, who awkwardly, guess what he used to do? He was Chuck Schumer's chief spokesperson before. He's ripping Chuck Schumer. Even he's ripping him. Do you understand that Chuck Schumer doesn't really have any dignity? He doesn't really have at all any integrity? Do you realize that Chuck Schumer is just a lying cheater, corrupt of the highest magnitude, who puts on a suit and glasses?
Doesn't even wear the glasses right.
He doesn't even. So you think, oh, he's a white guy in a suit and glasses, and he's nominated, and he's, you know, the Democrats all put him as the leader, which they didn't. That Wall Street does. So he can't be 1,000% full of it, can he? Yes. Does he have any integrity? No. These guys don't care. He is now the executive director of Demand Justice, a progressive judicial advocacy group. That's Brian Fallon. Chuck Schumer's previous spokesperson, chief spokesperson.
Well, and it's interesting to note, too, and I'm not super familiar with Demand Justice. Like, I don't know a ton about that group, but it's always interesting when you see somebody who started, working with elected officials that then decides, I'm going to work on a cause instead.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I've kind of reevaluated how change really works.
We should get that guy on the show. Mm-hmm. And that Trump put Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court and is poised to get another justice through, Brett Kavanaugh, and you've got a president drastically reshaping the nation's courts for generations. An entire branch of government is being lost for generations, and Senate Democrats are willfully blind to it. So people with power who could actually stand up and do something aren't. They're not doing anything. But you got to vote blue. So people will wag their finger at me because, do you know, I remember people on panel after panel screaming at me about the judicial appointments that Trump's going to make. Well, guess who doesn't give a fuck about it? The Democrats who are actually in power, even Bernie Sanders. Not one person is standing up. So you still going to wag your finger at a nightclub comedian with no money and no power and blame the judicial system on me because I wouldn't vote for a corporatist warmonger? Or are you going to actually start now like a grown-up and holding people in power responsible and accountable? We know the answer to that. They're going to keep wagging their finger at people like me with no money and no power. And they're going to keep turning their head and turning a blind eye to the Democrats who keep selling you out every goddamn day.
I hope you enjoyed that clip of Ring of Fire, or rather Farron Cousins, if you want to use his actual name, and the Jimmy Dore show. I always put those in the beginning to illustrate my point before I actually say anything. I'm a pretty good editor if I do say so myself. But I want to make sure we have the numbers correct. There have presently been 162 Article 3 judges nominated by Trump. And out of this group, you've had 2 associate justices, 46 judges for the U.S. Court of Appeals, 112 judges for the United States District Courts, and 2 judges for the United States Court of International Trade. And the Senate has confirmed 3 U.S. Court of Federal Claims judges, 4 for the U.S. Tax Court, 4 for the United States Court of Appeals for Veteran Claims, 1 for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, and 1 for the U.S. Court of Military Commission Review. Now, and I understand that when there's a 5 or 6 minute clip playing, a lot of times it's hard to remember every specific part of it. But one of the points Farron was making was that there's been a lot of hemming and hawing for the last couple of years about, oh my God, we need to make sure we get the Supreme Court because if the Republicans get it, they're going to put all these right-wingers that are going to take away women's reproductive rights and do all of these horrible things. And those of us who don't have the hysteria do not contest the possibility of this occurring. But it's nice to think about things in perspective. If the Supreme Court hears less than 200 cases a year, whereas the Court of Appeals and the various other lower courts, in reference to the Supreme Court, hear thousands a year, I'm kind of going to be more concerned about the lower courts. And the Democrats have done a very piss-poor, horrible job of trying to address this issue. I have not seen a single Democratic senator or Democratic congressman or congresswoman state anything about the court packing or speak in reference to the party deciding to just let these people fly right by. Now, they've had a lot of stuff about Kavanaugh. You would think he was the only person that Trump nominated at all for anything. That's why it was so disgusting that Gorsuch was able to get in there within 3 months into Trump's term, 4 months into it. I know he was there by April. of 2017, and there was very little. There's been almost next to nothing written about him by anyone for some strange reason. Well, like I said, people like drama and they love the sex scandals and whatnot. But you're going to see people who will say Obama couldn't have put these in because the Republicans were stopping him from nominating and getting someone confirmed. Now, that man that everyone hated that had that wonderful mustache, Bolton, in, I believe it was 2005, it was during the George W. years, his second term, because of a Democratic filibuster and W. Bush wanting him as UN ambassador regardless of Democratic opposition, he made him a recess appointment. He fast-tracked his nomination, and he was able to serve because of this installation, this type of installation. So Obama could have fast-tracked all of the judges that were in the lower courts. Now, there's some controversy with the Supreme Court, obviously, but the point is there was still something he could have done. Also, we're going to pretend that period of 2009 to 2011 when he had a supermajority in the Senate and the House, that didn't exist. That never happened. Told you, all his supporters, they love to hide behind the Republican obstruction. There was nothing he could do. Not true. Republicans have faced Democratic obstruction. It seems like they always find a way to get what they want, for the most part. And if something they have fails, it's usually because of opposition within their own party. But, I don't need to tell you about the weakness of the Democrats. You already saw that with the story about Schumer and the rest of the clowns in the upper chamber of Congress deciding, well, we want to go home, so let's let these 15 crazy Trump nominees just get right through. It's all right. It's perfectly acceptable. And no one has a problem with this. I don't see anyone protesting these judges. And just to clarify, I don't expect someone to know the names or the various backgrounds of 100 different judges. That is ridiculous. It's an expectation I wouldn't even have of myself. And I consider myself to be someone that's very much into this stuff and takes it, with some heightened level of interest in the regular person or what the normal person would be considered. But when you have a Democratic Congress, so counting the senators and the representatives, you have over 200 people, probably close to 300. You can literally, if you are the Speaker of the House or the Senate Minority Leader, so if you're the Democratic leader in either chamber, you can say, hey, look, we've got these weird judges. I want to make sure that we keep a tab on what they're doing. You get this person, you get that person, you watch this person, because they're all in their states, so they can go around and basically say, hey, let's keep tabs on them and try to live with the fact that they're going to be here for the next 40, 50, possibly 60 years. A lot of them are not that old. I'm quite mystified by the idea that you can have so much attention placed on the presidency and the Supreme Court, but then all of these other offices, and this just goes back to a point I've been making for a while. I'm planning on doing a video called, and I'll try to put it out by the end of this month, the top 10 senators of the 2010s. And I give various bills they've authored and stuff they've done over the last decade to put them in that category. And I was making the point of how with the presidency and the Supreme Court, people have this thing where even if they're apolitical or if they don't really consider politics to be their main source of interest, they still have enough of an interest to want to vote, to want to talk about it, to want to speak on the positives, the negatives, to just give it some basic form of attention. But whenever you talk about senators or someone's congressman or any judge that's on the Supreme Court, the only people I see really mobilized to go after these offices are Republicans, which is a point that Farron made in his video when I played before this. When you had the 12 Republican senators, which included Collins, Murkowski, Paul, Lee, Alexander from Tennessee. You know, when they voted against giving Trump money for the border wall back in, I think it was February, they were called the Dirty Dozen. Their names are being spread across Twitter by various Republicans, and they were saying, we're going to get these people out of here. They turned on them in the flip of a switch, but the one thing they did was mobilize themselves. Now, Farron mentioned very briefly in the video about the Powell memo, which was a memorandum put forth by future Associate Justice Powell, who was nominated by Nixon, that basically outlined how corporate America could increase its strength over American society, just to give a really summarized explanation of it. But he cites this as the basis for how Republicans have been taking over the courts and planning this out for such a long time. And indeed they have. That period of that Powell memo coincides with the start of McConnell's career as a politician, a person who people call the obstructionist, say, oh my God, he's so powerful. And he's a very powerful, significant, big deal politician. I think if I were to make a list of the top 10 most significant politicians of my lifetime, because I've been alive, you know, for his entire time as Senate Majority Leader and just as Republican leader in the Senate, he would be in the top 10. He is a very impactful person, but just because he's impactful and just because he has power doesn't mean he's some invincible man who is making all this stuff happen without weakness on the other side. You just had this story that Jimmy mentioned, which was the Democrats saying, oh, we want to go home, so we're going to just let them fast track these nominations. And they'll be the same people to come out and give some stupid speech about, we've got to stop the Republicans from messing with our progressive agenda or our continuance of progress. You know, they don't talk about specific issues other than abortion and whatnot, but they'll go and vilify these people. But then when you say, now wait a second, what did you do to try and stop this? Because they didn't. It's politics in the modern era is so much like kabuki theater or just acting. You know, people pretend to be upset with something, and then those of us who have the power to stop it, whether it's I don't know, if I'm Senate Minority Leader, not fast-tracking the judges for the opposing party that I claim has this backwards ideology because I want to go home. Or if I'm a voter, making sure that these people have their records checked out and not voting for them. I don't understand why people can't do the basic thing of saying there are ramifications for a president's tenure that go beyond them. All that whining about, oh my God, look at Trump's tweets, look at Trump's various comments he's made that people don't agree with or that are stupid or whatever. Those could have been days on CNN or MSNBC spent talking about these judges. I only heard about a single, outside of Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, a single lower court judge, that Thomas Farr guy, the one that they were saying is so, you know, racist and horrible. That's the only person they spent any small milliliter, and I don't even think that was mainstream news. I think I mostly heard of him on Democracy Now! But again, they don't care. And then when bad things happen to them, when their rights get repealed by these evil people in power, they want to play victim. Oh, I never could have seen this coming. You never could have seen it coming because you didn't take the initiative to look at which one of these judges was in your jurisdiction or your area or some place where they directly impacted the laws affecting you. And so now you're getting screwed by it, and you have no one but yourself to blame. You voted for Obama, the person who could have had recess appointments to fill these seats, and you allowed there to be no kind of public outcry or protest or anything toward members of the, you know, supposedly good Democratic Party in reference to these judges. When people, and this is a point I've been making, I blame the Democrats for a lot of this stuff because when they have chances to actually rally behind a specific set of issues, they don't. They spent all year talking about immigration, When they talk about international issues, it's usually in favor of what Trump's trying to do. So unless it's, getting out of a war, in which case they, like Syria, they go crazy in that respect. But when people rally behind them and say, hey, we're not going to vote for you if you don't take this position, they're forced to do it. And if the politicians don't take the position after have being gone after in this way, you vote them out. But they don't do any of this. They just get upset over a Supreme Court nomination. They cry about, oh my God, is Ginsburg going to survive or not? And then we end up in the exact same spot again in a few years, with these same judges working under the table or without any of the public interest that a Supreme Court nominee would have. And then only when the decisions they make negatively impact us do we start to care. It's too little, too late.